Okay. Thank you, Dove, for the setup. Page 608, Parshas Tazria.
Yes.
And Bar Mitzvah Parsha. Okay. 608. And you could spread the word that that all of these are up on YouTube, all of these shiurim. So if you search Beth Jacob Irvine on YouTube, you'll get all of these classes and also the lunch and learn. So it hasn't quite gone viral yet, but there are people who told me that they've come across it and they're enjoying it. So,
it's still not the same as sitting in the class.
Okay. That's why I encourage people to come. Actually, in the email that's
you too could be on YouTube.
Yeah, an email that I sent out, right? So it said, search YouTube, in order to watch at your convenience. But if you prefer live, so I said, come to this morning, last night, this morning, tonight. We have a class also on continuing. It's the third of the 4-part series about understanding the Friday night davening better. And tonight is the third part, which is on the Amidah, the Shemona Esrei, and that's at Jeff and Ilana Sampson tonight, 8:45. Why is it
at home it's so much nicer?
At home it's nicer. Yeah. So we do a little bit of all. Whatever we try to keep it a good smorgasbord, so everyone can find what they find appetizing. Okay, Parshat Tazria is going to be dealing with a couple of very interesting, strange laws that we need to understand and try to fully appreciate. So let us begin with Tazria, okay? And we're going to start off with something that is often misunderstood, so let's try to get a better understanding of it. Welcome back, Hazel. Why don't you lead off for us, please, in the Hebrew?
וידבר השם אל משה לאמר, דבר אל בני ישראל לאמור אישה כי תזריע וילדה זכר וטמאה 7 ימים כימי נידת דותה תשמע.
Okay, one more pasuk. Uvayom hashmini.
hashmini yimul besar arlato.
Beautiful. Yosef, take for us that first few. Hashem
spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the children of Israel, saying, when a woman conceives and gives birth to a male, she shall be contaminated for a 7-day period, as during the days of her separation and infirmity shall she be contaminated. On the 8th day, the flesh of his foreskin shall be circumcised.
Take a few more.
For 33 days she shall remain in blood of purity. She may not touch anything sacred, and she may not enter the sanctuary until the completion of her days of purity. If she gives birth to a female, she shall be contaminated for 2 weeks, as during her separation, and for 66 days she shall remain in blood of purity."
Beautiful. So first of all, this term contaminated is not a term that I would have chosen to use. I lean more towards ritual impurity as opposed to contamination. Right? We hear contamination. We think of the hazmat suits going on, and
I was not real comfortable with infirmity either. What is the Hebrew?
Tameya,
Which is contamination?
which is impurity, ritual impurity.
Contamination is more of a zihum, no?
Yeah.
You're in trouble if you have a twin boy and girl.
Well, so let's understand this.
That
Right?
was me.
Okay, so I'd like to touch upon this whole idea of tumah, right? Right, when a woman conceives and gives birth to a male, right? So our first thought is, oh, beautiful, wonderful. This is such a heightened spiritual period. I mean, when you're actually involved in the birth of a child, it is so miraculous.
Oh, yeah.
It is, second to walking a child down the aisle to the chuppah.
Yes.
It is.
Right.
It is just this otherworldly experience. It is miraculous. You are really going beyond your physical self and entering this whole other world. And we're talking about tumah,
Thank you.
right? Even if so let's not use a term as they use here in the English, contaminated. Okay? So let's just say ritual impurity. But even so, now there's this ritual impurity. Are you kidding? This is the heightened point of spirituality. What in the world does heightened spirituality, this touching godliness, what in the world does it have to do? What is its connection to tumah, to spiritual impurity? And the answer is everything. It has everything to do with it. But let's understand and hopefully appreciate why it is. Let's go a little bit further first. Okay, so Yosef, so we read. She gives birth to a male. She's contaminated for a 7-day period. Okay? She gives birth to a female in Pasuk Hey in verse 5. What happens?
2 weeks.
Right? For 2 weeks.
Double.
Double. Right? So, as much tumah, impurity, as there is when a boy is born, here we go, right? When a girl is born, there's going to be double the dose.
This is the future.
Okay? Okay. So, how do we wrap our heads around this? Now, this is not contamination. This is talking about a ritual, spiritual state.
Is it because the female's going to menstruate as well and have
Okay, so let's deal with that also. Menstruation also brings about this tum'ah, this ritual impurity. What else brings about ritual impurity? Or what is what's called the avi avot hatumah? The grandfather, the source, the very essence of tumah is death. Is death. A dead body imparts a tremendous amount of tumah. It's called, technically speaking, avi avot hatumah. There's an av hatumah, which is like the father, the source of tumah, which can then create a primary, which will then create a secondary, and death is avi avot hatumah. That's the father of the father, because that which comes in contact with a mate will itself become an av, right? Not a primary or secondary, but it becomes actually the av, almost like the source. What is that? And to complicate things further, there is a certain degree, there are different levels of this tum'ah and the way that this is imparted. Most basically, if one comes in direct contact, that will impart this tum'ah. Additionally, if one is not in direct contact, but one is carrying, and thereby bearing the weight of the tumah, even though I'm not directly touching the tumah, but I am carrying masa, I am carrying the tumah. Now, contact, either through maga, direct contact, or masa, carrying, with any mate, with any dead body will impart that tumah. However, there is a third aspect, which is tumat ohel, which is being under the same roof, the same covering as a mate. And ohel literally means a tent. And there, just being under the same covering would also impart tumah.
So if you go to a funeral, for example.
Okay, that is why, for example, excellent examples too. I just saw now an announcement for a funeral, and it said clearly that the person, the nifta, the person who passed away, will be in that room. Kohanim need to know to stay outside, right? It's only Kohanim who have this prohibition to not come in contact with a mate, right? Funerals are an issue. Hospitals in Israel are an issue. Okay, well, the reason is that whereas any mate, one will have tumah by either maga or masa, but being under the ohel, that's only if it's a Jewish person. Only then will impurity be imparted by being under the same roof. But not under the same roof, but under the same roof with a non-Jew who passed away, then there will not be tumah that is imparted in such a way.
But you said only Kohanim,
Yes.
not regular
Yes.
Jews.
Right. A regular Jew will also become tameh. I'm sorry, I wasn't clear. Anyone will become tameh from any type of those contacts. It's only a Kohen who is warned, who is commanded, don't become
And
tameh.
if a Kohen is a doctor, they shouldn't be doctors.
Well, there are those that say that will discourage a Kohen from becoming a doctor for that reason, right? For having to work with
it looks
the...
like birth and death are so interrelated.
Okay, good.
So
Birth and death are very related.
That's what I wanted to say. When the baby girl is born, she has all her eggs to give life, and yet each egg goes through a death period.
Okay.
So that's an integration of life
Yeah,
and death.
okay. Integration of life and death, and certainly menstruation is
Yeah.
also.
That's what it
Okay.
is.
what about those people that's their job to prepare the body for burial?
Coroners.
Yes,
They do it every day, the whole day.
yes.
What's happening to them?
Nothing is, well, at this
Some of them
point,
probably religious people.
yes, 100%. Look, the Chevra Kadisha, the Chevra Kadisha certainly dealing respectfully with a mate, that is what we call chesed shel emet. That is the kindness of the true kindness, because there's no compensation. So a person must deal with a mate, right? Even if a person is a Kohen, even if he's a Kohen Gadol, even if he's a Kohen Gadol who is a Nazir, a Nazirite is another person who willingly took on that status of being a Nazir and also cannot come in contact with a mate. If a person who's a Kohen Gadol and a Nazirite who encounters a body called a mate mitzvah, a body that needs someone to tend to it, there's no one tending to it, then he must tend to it, even though he become defiled. So there's nothing wrong in being a mate mitzvah. Now we can't go through the process of purification because we don't have all the necessary things, which is the para aduma, the red heifer, right? And whenever in Israel, whenever a red heifer is born into one of the flocks there, it always makes the big news. It means, Mashiach is coming, and therefore we'll be able to reinstate all these different processes. And now another case where it comes up, right, is while visiting a cemetery, right, and going under a tree there. Because even though you're not coming in direct contact, but you don't want to be under the tree, because that will serve as an ohel. There are many Kohanim who don't like to fly El Al to Israel, because El Al often transports bodies to Israel for burial. And that is why in El Al they have a special compartment where, of course, the bodies are kept, but it's made in such a way that there's enough space between the coffin and the ceiling that that ceiling down there in that compartment is considered the ohel. So whatever is within that compartment will have that tumah, that ritual impurity. Because if there is no space, then the tumah goes up to the next available ohel covering, which would be where the passengers are sitting. In which case everyone will be tameh there. Right? So it is constructed in such a way, but people, Kohanim, don't want to take a chance or whatever. So there are many, many ramifications of this.
What happened
But
to
what
that?
is? But what is it? What is it? Why is there this impurity? Now, if it's contamination, which again a term that was used here that I'm not happy with, right? So you would imagine that, well, it would be hard to understand why is there a greater degree of tumah, of impurity, by a Jew than by a non-Jew. So the places where we have this is by birth, we have it by death, we have it by menstruation, we have it, well, we'll come to the main topic of Tazriya Mitzora, which is, I don't want to call it leprosy, because it's not leprosy, but it was this physical manifestation of a spiritual decay, right, which came out in lesions on the skin and on the hair that is called sorat. So, and we'll come to that soon.
Psoriasis comes from the word.
I'm sorry?
Psoriasis comes
what
from
came
the
to
Psoriasis. That's interesting.
Is that
Yeah.
what came to my mind?
Yeah.
Interesting. I never heard it. I never heard it before like that, but that's probably
Yes, I
that.
never heard that
Psoriasis
Yeah.
before.
come
Wow.
from what word?
Yeah, you
Sarat
know,
in Hebrew is the
Ah.
skin lesions, and psoriasis, PSO. Yeah, interesting.
Well, they were the early doctors.
Huh?
Early doctors.
Yeah.
Like
So in understanding
not the
in
witch
this tumah, so we see clearly that we're not talking about this. Well, we're not talking about a contamination, because this, death is. Why is a contamination? And certainly after giving birth, why is there contamination? This idea, this understanding of tumah, is explained in the following way. We are tasked. We are sent here to this earth for a limited period of time. Exactly how long? We only know that when we can no longer know it.
Right.
We only know that
When
at
it's
that
too
point.
late.
Right? When we've already made the transition from this world that we were sent, tasked with, and we returned back home. We returned back to base, so to speak. What is our mission here? Our mission here is to become as uplifted, as godly as possible. How do we do that? How are we meant to do that? How do we define that? The way we define that is with our Torah, with our instruction guide from God, with our manual. This is the pathway. This is the way to do it. These are the positive actions which bring us close to God. We call those mitzvot. These are the negative actions which distance us from God. We call those the lavs, the don'ts, the prohibitions. This is the pathway that is given to us. And whenever we make whenever we do a mitzvah, the words that we say, the bracha we make beforehand is Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher kiddishanu v'mitzvotav, that you have sanctified us. Now, not in all mitzvot do we make this bracha. Invariably, we make this bracha when there is an action, because an action is what is mekadesh kedushat haguf, that is which sanctifies and brings holiness to the body. By doing a mitzvah, that is what infuses this body with spirituality. But the idea is to make ourselves as godly as possible. Tumah, impurity, comes about when there is an absence, a vacuum that is created by that kedusha no longer being there. That is why death is called Avi Avot Hatuma. It's the father, the source, the father of all Tumah, because that is the epitome of the absence, of the abscess, of the vacuum that is created when there was tremendous kedusha, there was tremendous holiness, purity, potential. There was this part of God, this chelik elokam imal, this spark of godliness, this neshama that was in us, that brought us to life. And then that neshama is gone, was taken away. And at that point, we're left with a cloak. We're left with a garment that is bereft of its essence, of what it was. That has left. There is now this abscess. What fills that? Now there is tumah. There is impurity, because that potential, that which was there, that possibility for absolute holiness is no longer there.
Okay, but we're talking about birth and life.
Oh.
The complete opposite.
Okay. Now,
You're dragging me on, it's killing me. Sorry. That is why death is the Avi Avot HaTumah. Death is the epitome of Tumah, of impurity. And whereas we say that every single human being was created B'Tselem Elokim, in the image of God, and therefore there is impurity with the death, with the body of every single human being. But every human being has 7 mitzvot, 7 commandments as ways of connecting to God. A Jew is given 613 connections, 613 pathways. And therefore, the potential for connection is that much greater and that much deeper. And therefore, once that neshama leaves, there is a greater degree of tumah. Not just contact, not just masa carrying, but even being under the same enclosure. Right? And just to frustrate Ali a little bit further, before we get to the birth, right? And that is why when we wake up in the morning, there is the moda'ani, the thanks, shechazarta bi nishmati, that you've returned the neshama, and therefore we also have this ritual washing of our hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And why are we washing our hands in the morning? So there are different reasons that are given. One reason is because we're like a new creation, so we're consecrating this new creation. Another reason that's given is that the Kohen, the priests, when they would go into the temple to perform the avodah, what would they do? They would need to wash kiddush yadayim raglayim. They would wash their hands. So too, when we are born, when we wake up in the morning, When we wake up in the morning, so what happens? Right? We are now entering our temple. What is the temple? The temple is the place where they would perform their avoda. What is our temple? Our temple is our body. Our temple is our world. Our temple is our day, our relationship with our spouses, with our friends, with the community. We are preparing ourselves to enter our temple today. This is our temple. This is where we are performing our avoda.
So we vacate the temple when we die, and now the temple is ritually impure. It's contaminated.
Well, let's wait. Let's wait. Okay. So when we wake up in the morning, what happened? We're thanking God for bringing back our neshama, which meant our neshama left us at night. To a certain degree, our neshama, certain parts of the neshama leave at night. And that results in tumah. There's a lack of ability. There's a lack of ability to serve Hashem when we are asleep.
Okay.
That is why ritually, right? Exactly why like that? I don't know. Those who understand all of this said that's the way to wash your hands in the morning. And I, not being an expert when it comes to these spirits and these ruachs, etc., I say, yes, sir. And that's why I wash in that way. Yes, Dove.
Doesn't the other side have some alms trying to get in?
All right, perhaps. Janet?
So when those that little, what is it, like 1/64th of whatever your neshama is, goes at night, isn't it doing even more spiritual things? So that
It might be.
When you immediately
It might be, but the body
right, but when you
had that abscess.
wake up and it has returned, now aren't you even more?
You might be more energized to do more things,
and having more potential.
but you might be more energized to do more things, but there was that absence that needs to be dealt with.
Energized in the morning.
I'm sorry?
Did you mean energized in the morning?
What?
Energized
Energized,
in
yeah.
the morning.
Yeah, physically and spiritually.
What about those who aren't?
We all are. That's why we slept. Okay.
Back to the birth.
Okay. So now. Okay. So now the moment that Allie's been waiting for.
Yeah, I feel the
Okay.
same.
Okay. So we understand that it's not contamination. There is spirituality that has left. There's an abscess, and it's very interesting, right? Physically, when there's an abscess, what happens?
Abscess?
An abscess in the body usually gets filled with an infection. Is that correct?
Oh, I thought you were saying absent.
Well, they're both, right? But it's interesting to note that an abscess in the body physically gets filled usually with infection,
Yeah.
right? And to a degree, that would be a physical manifestation of the spiritual concept that we're discussing here, that when there is this spiritual abscess, so then what fills it is tumah, is impurity. What in the world does this have to do with birth? Birth is holiness. Birth is godliness. Birth is creation. Exactly. That's what it has to do with it. Meaning, if we are saying that the purpose of a human being, the task that we are all tasked with, is to become godly. If we were to describe God in one word, what is unique about God? So we could say omniscient,
Creator.
creator, would certainly be on our list.
Sure.
Creator is on our list. Why is it that birth touches us so deeply? Now, Natalie said, when she was in the hospital with one of the kids, right, and in the next room, right, was this Arab woman, right, giving birth, right, and this was during the intifadas, when things were not going, a little tense, you know. But nevertheless, she said she couldn't help but starting to cry.
Of course, you're always emotional at that point, anyhow. But she heard about when she heard the baby being born, you couldn't help but starting to cry. There's an emotion that touches us so deeply at the time of a birth.
Absolutely.
Right? Why is that? What is that?